fear of the future, fear of what's going to become of me. I had no qualifications, and I didn't want to go home to Ireland as a failure because I felt I was a failure. I felt a failure, and I got on the bus. Didn't tell I was going to do it because I didn't know I was going to do it. It's the one they call the Widowmaker. You're very lucky that you got here. It is insecurity. It's a fear of being the worst person in the room. As soon as I started typing 2 fingers on my kitchen table, in my head I was a published author and I was going to go into a bookshop, and I had a pinstripe suit and a little button on my suit just popped off like that and rolled over the side of the thing. My kids were oblivious to all of that. They were having this great life and they were having these great holidays and great things happening. Your reputation is none of your business. Just stay the course. My feet hit the water and my head hit the bank like that. The same girl I met when I was 14 years old is still with me. I can remember walking out of the door and not knowing if it was daylight and not knowing if it was dark. And would I go back and swap any of it? No, I probably wouldn't swap one bit of it.
Thanks for doing this, Paul.
Thank you for having me.
How does it feel to be the youngest player to ever play for Newcastle?
It feels 60 years old and 3 stone heavier, really. But well, at the time, it was an amazing thing.
Yeah.
An amazing thing to happen, because I was, when I was 16, I mean, I don't know what your education system is, but in Ireland, I left school just before the last year of my O-levels. So not at the end of it, just before. And then I made my debut for Newcastle in the May. And I went home in the June, and my friends from school were sitting their O-levels. And they're thinking, God, Paul's a superstar footballer, and I'm thinking, no, I'm crying myself to sleep every night. I want to be doing my exams with you. So it was an amazing thing, Samir. But the older I've got, the more I appreciate it. At the time, I just didn't really.
Yeah, I think a lot of times we don't appreciate what we have in the moment. And I think being the youngest player ever to play for Newcastle at that point of time would have meant so much. But when you're in that moment, you don't feel that it's something out of the ordinary.
Well, you don't, and actually, when it happens, you think, oh well, that's going to, and even that career, you think that's going to happen all the time. Those events are going to happen all the time, and then things happen, and you don't have the career you think you're going to have, and then you look back on those moments, and they become big moments that I, But at the time, you just think, oh, this is a stepping stone. I'm going to play next week, or I'm going to go next week.
So were you always hungry to do better, more, as a child and as you grew up?
Yeah. I'm less competitive now, even on a sports quiz or a pub quiz than I would have been when I was younger. When I was younger, I was fiercely competitive. I mean, fiercely competitive in everything at school.
You're still very competitive. I mean,
well, I don't have to, quietly so. I don't want people to know. Obviously, I don't want people to know they're competing with me until they've lost. But go on.
I know you don't like to fly a lot, but I know that when business requires, you travel. And you travel I remember the last time you were in India, you traveled for a day and a half. Not too many people would do it in the 30s. You're doing it in your 60s.
Yeah, and I think that comes from your upbringing. That's how I was brought up. I think you have to, if you're going to commit to something, you can't go into it half-hearted. So if you're going to commit to being a footballer, then you need to be a footballer. If you're going to commit to being a CEO, you need to commit to being a CEO. If you're going to commit to anything, you have to commit to it.
You had a very interesting career, Paul. You started. Football obviously was your passion. You were good at that. You were talented. You started, playing football. You're the youngest player to play, but then you hit with a roadblock. You had an injury, which got you out of the game. Which in itself, for most people, would be a point in time where they would think that they've lost it all. If I were in your place, and I've seen a lot of kids go through this, and they would never be able to come out of that, because it's life-changing, and it was for you as well. For somebody who would think, I'm the youngest player who's ever played for Newcastle, and I've got this next thing, I want to do a next thing, and you never imagine that you would hit a roadblock like this.
No.
So when you got injured, and you said, okay, I'm going to go back, I'm going to get whatever needs to be done and start playing. So for that duration, you must have still thought that, I'm going to get back, and you never thought of an alternate, did you?
No, because there never was an alternative. So when you were younger at school, you were always the talented footballer, so you're always going to be a footballer. And if you make your debut for Newcastle and you're 16, then it's likely you're going to be a footballer, because you're making your debut before all the other boys are. And then actually, in my case, I actually had a moment, Samir, when I was 17, when I kind of lost my way, because I didn't quite, it all came a bit too soon. And Kevin Keegan arrived as a superstar, and he was my hero, and I got lost in all of that. But then he left, and we got a new manager in, and we got promoted into the then first division. And I found my way back into the first team picture. Scored a goal at St James's Park, which I think I've bored you about several times, so I won't bore you about it today. But actually, at the Gallagher end, and again, at the time, didn't look at it on TV, didn't video it, didn't do it, because I thought there's going to be lots more of that, because that's my world, that's what I'm going to be.
Yeah.
And then I got a really nasty injury at 19, and when you say, there was moments during that when I realised it was slipping away, and it was difficult. My then girlfriend, who I'm very proud to say is now my wife, came across from Ireland just as I got my injury when I was 19, because I was lonely and homesick, and she came across, and we persuaded her parents it was a good idea. I don't know why they ever thought, but they thought it was a good idea. And she came across thinking she's going to be with a footballer. And actually, for 2 years, a year and a half, I tried to get fit, and I think I described it was like sand going through your fingers. I was you go into training, and the coaches are not talking to you the way they did before, and the physio is working hard with you, but you kind of can see that they're getting tired, and it just, I knew I wasn't going to get back, and I knew the injury was worse than people. Surgeon was saying, this is a 6-week injury, you'll be fine. And every time I was coming back, I'm breaking down, and I'm thinking, it's more than this, it's bigger than this, and I know it's bigger than this, because my leg doesn't feel right. But actually, you go fast forward to 21 years old, and the football club put you on a month-to-month contract, and then you look back and you realise they do that because they can't release you from a year's contract legally because you got injured. It's an industrial injury almost, but they can release you from a month-to-month contract. And I went on a month-to-month contract, and that's what happened. I kind of got sent off to a club somewhere down the country, Port Vale, I think, and I went down and trained for a day and got in and felt the knee again and thought, I'm not right. Came back to Newcastle with my girlfriend, went to a friend's house, and said to his mum, can we stay with you, because I've got no home, I've got nowhere to stay, and I've got nowhere, because the nice posh footballer's flat had gone. And she said, yeah, you can stay with us. And we stayed there, and I called the club, I called Newcastle United on 3 occasions to say I'm still not right, and 3 occasions no one answered. And I was a shy boy, and I should have been more forceful. When I'm older now, I think I should have knocked their door down. And I didn't, but I contacted the Professional Footballers Association. They then took me to a different surgeon, made Newcastle United pay for the surgery, but it was too little too late, really. I was 2.5 years down the line. And this girl who'd come across to marry a footballer had to go and get a job working in a shop and we went to go to the council, and we got ourselves a council flat, like a council flat, a masonette. And we got into that, and you think, yeah, I'm going to fight back. And then at that time, my mum died. Right then, at that moment, and it was just, when you say, you mentioned the start about when you say about being in a hole or being somewhere, that was the greatest hole of my life. There's no question. There's no question at that particular moment. I was aware that life had just kicked me very hard. That 6 months ago I was a footballer, and now I have no home. I'm trying to find somewhere to live. My girlfriend's working in the shop, and my mum died.
So tell me, what was going through your mind at that point when you knew that football is no longer for you? That exact moment, if you go back and see, what went through your mind?
Fear of the future, fear of what's going to become of me. I have no qualifications. I'm living away from home. I'm living in England. I'm an Irish boy. The person who was the most important person in my life, my mother, had gone. And there was a period when, I think I might have talked to this when we were in India recently. I think it sounds very dramatic, but it's true. I can remember walking out of the door and not knowing if it was daylight and not knowing if it was dark. And my wife had gone off, my then girlfriend had gone off to work, and I'm walking around the street thinking, I don't know if it's day, I don't know if it's day or night. I'm lost, and I was lost, and I didn't want to go home to Ireland as a failure, because I felt I was a failure. I felt a failure. I felt that everybody expected me to be a successful footballer, and I was going to go home as 21-year-old field footballer.
So did you feel sympathy toward yourself? Did you think that, man, I was just unlucky? I don't know if I felt sorry for myself, or I think when my mum died and you're injured, I think for a time you definitely are in that place where you think, God, this is life's. This is tough. I've been dealt a tough hand here. And I can remember, Samir, just listening to the radio one day, and the radio. I think they still do the same advert. There was a further education college in Newcastle called Newcastle College, and this college transformed my life. By the way, every time I look at it, I think, oh, that transformed my life. And it said, be the best you can be. Enroll today to do A levels or something.
And I got on the bus. My wife was at work. I didn't even tell her that morning. She went to work that morning. Didn't tell her I was going to do it because I didn't know I was going to do it. I got on the bus out of instinct after hearing the advert. And went down to this college, walked in the door to this woman who was the enrollment thing, and I said to her, can I do some A-levels? And she said, do you have any O-levels? And I said, no, I left school before and she said, well, you can't do A-levels then, you've got to do this other course. So I did this foundation course where they're kind of making sure you can read and write and do whatever. And I did this course. I did very well on it and realised that actually it would be wrong of me to say I didn't know I was a reasonably bright boy. I knew I was bright at school, but I just didn't do the exams. But I did that course and kind of just forgot about the football and started to focus on the education. And back in those days, the government was saying, you need to get a job or we're taking your benefits off you. And I can remember going into this benefits office place and saying to this woman, I don't want the job, but I'm doing this course and I'm going to be a physiotherapist. I'm going to go to university. And they were saying, yeah, you're not going to do that, are you? You're trying to scam this. I said, no, I'm not trying to scam the system. I need some help to help me to get back on my feet because I have no family support and my wife's got a part-time job. We don't, and I remember almost begging people to try and help.
And this was in England.
This is in England. I'm trying to beg people to help me get back on my feet, and I did. And the system did help me. We got a reduced rent, and my wife got a job. We were able to get some money to get us by. But I can remember during that period going to the supermarket at 5:15 because they reduced the price of the meat at 5:15 so that I could go in and get the cheaper meat because we didn't have any money. So I was doing that, did the studying, realized I was doing really well with that. Then I got enrolled in a physiotherapy degree, but they made me wait a year to get on the course. So instead of going to work, I thought I'll do some A-levels. So I did some A-levels in history and politics, which are kind of relevant to my story later on because with the law stuff. But and I did that and did really well with them. But enrolled in this physio course, and actually lived in this not a very nice place really. On this a terrible place. We lived in a place, and I don't say, but my wife managed to buy a little car, an old second-hand car. And people would just they just open the door and let the handbrake off and it'd run down the hill just for the sake of it, just or leave. You go into your car and just and go to the toilet, you know what I mean? And sitting and just and you get up in the morning and your car's got excrement in it or whatever, and you're like, where are we living here? Where are we going? But I knew you asked about. I knew I've always been good if I have a target, and you said about giving your all, and I've always thought. Every room I walk into, I think everybody in the room is brighter than me and everybody's smarter than me and I have to work harder than them and I have to do all those things. That's proven to be not be the case. But I have been in lots of rooms in my life and my first instinct is probably not what you want to hear. It's not this, I'm the big I am. It's the opposite. It is insecurity. It's a fear of being the worst person in the room and having to show these people that I'm capable. And I did that with my first exams, the second ones, and with my physiotherapy stuff, and I did it later on when we'll probably get on to talk about the law stuff. And I came out the other side with a physiotherapy degree and worked in a local hospital and thought that's where my world is. I never contacted Newcastle United from the moment I left in 1987 until the moment I went back in again as a physio. I actually didn't. And then you meet people and they say, oh, Newcastle United looked after you very well, didn't they? I think, no, they didn't. They really didn't. They just didn't. It was, you were, when I look back now, it's probably unacceptable what happened, but I wasn't strong enough.
It won't happen today, would it?
It won't happen today, and it shouldn't happen today, and it shouldn't have happened then. It really shouldn't.
And especially to somebody, I mean, you look at it, if you look at it, you've moved in, I mean, it's just very difficult to visualize this. You've moved from Ireland to play in England in the Northeast, you just shifted to a new country, and you've now started playing you're the youngest player, you get injured, and you get no support. For a boy who's not from this country.
It's not the support. You got treatment for 2 years and support there, but at the end, when it's clear that you're not going to be right, there's no support at that point. But that's the time when you.
That's the time you need the support.
That's the time you need it.
Yeah.
When I ring that football club once, and I've given them 5 years, and I've had this trouble, they should have called me back. Someone should have called me back, and I can remember speaking to the secretary still. And the third time I rang, she said, "Look, I've passed the message on. That's the best I can do." And that was it. And then, as I say, my mum died, and it was this journey. But actually. You know, when you're in it, Samir, it's a funny thing. I look back now and I talk to my kids about it. When I go back to where we lived and what we did and going to buy the cheaper meat and doing that, when you're in it, you kind of don't know you're in it. You kind of don't know you're in it. You don't know you're really in a bad place because in my head, I had something to focus on. I had the goal of being able to say to my family, look, I know it's a cliche, I may be the first person in this family to go to university and get a degree. I'm going to be proud of that, just as proud as I was of being a footballer, because education when I was a kid in my family wasn't a big part of our life. My family weren't from that sort of background. So no one valued education, but I recognised it as a way for me. It helped me as a person become more confident in myself. It helped me as a person be able to walk into a room and say, I am worthy and I am worth. Because actually, when you're going to be a footballer, when you're going to be a footballer and when it falls apart, you feel a failure. And I felt that very strongly. I still sometimes, my kids will look at the goal that I scored, or the people will say, your dad used to play for Newcastle, and I still back away from it because it never quite happened the way that it should. And I feel like that part of my life was a failure. Now, as I'm getting older, and I've got a granddaughter now, and she looks at old photographs and she said, "Is that you, granddad, playing for?" I can see that actually even to play 14 times for Newcastle is a big achievement. To score one goal is a big achievement. But when I was younger, I just felt like a failure, and I had to prove myself again, and I did that through education. And then,
so Paul, when reality kicked in, do you think that helped you realize that I come from a place where I will have to do everything on my own? Did that help you or push you?
Absolutely. It's the strangest thing. This actually is. It was a counselling session to me. It's the strangest thing. I still have that insecurity because of what happened back then. There was no family to fall back on. My mum had gone. There's no financial backing. You're walking around trying to get help from the government to try and get enough money to feed yourself and feed your then grow up. And I'm still that person. I know what that feels like, and I always have that fear. Even now, you can, and we'll talk about it. You're a qualified barrister, or you're a CEO, or you've got a master's degree, or you've got a good salary and a nice home and all those things. I'm still the same person walking around the street, thinking, how do I get out of this? So
who is Paul Ferris? So let's try and get Paul Ferris, the CEO of SpeedFlex, Paul Ferris, the best-selling author, Paul Ferris, the youngest football player for Newcastle United, out of the equation. Who is Paul Ferris as a person? What are you made of?
Well, I must be made of something. I think I don't know. I feel like insecurity has driven me a lot in my life, and I feel like that fear of failure has driven me an awful lot. And I think we talked off camera. We were walking along with some of your friends just before, talking about introverts and extroverts. Yeah. I wrote in The Boy in the Shed that I was a shy boy. I know. It isn't shyness; it's introversion. It's if we are in a room and there's 25 people in the room, I'm not coming across to speak to you. I'm going to be the person in the corner. But if you do speak to me and we do talk, then you won't shut me up. So, but I'm driven by. There must be something in there, Samir, that I always say this to people. You don't write a book about your life if you haven't got some form of ego, you haven't got some, if you don't think there's some story to tell. Yeah. But deep down when I'm lying in bed at night, I'm not the most super confident person in the world. I never have been. I'm 60 now, I'm never going to be. However, I think for my kids, I hope I've set an example that even while not being that confident, if you believe just enough and you want to prove yourself, you can do anything. And I feel like, if you're asking me, if we were starting next, this is the contradiction. If you said to me, Paul, we're going to start a band, I would say it's a great idea. So let's go and learn the music. Let's go and do it. Let's go, and we can. And other people would say, how can we start a band at 60? And I genuinely would think, why not? Why would we not do that? Yeah. You're writing a book at 58. I'm typing it in 2 fingers on my kitchen table. I don't want to jump too far. The Boy in the Shed. I'm typing it 2 fingers. I should get a medal for writing a book, because actually I'm typing. It's taking me hours to do that, and every now and then I'm losing it. I'm shouting at my kids, help, because it's gone. And they're saying it's not gone. It's not gone. We'll find it. It's still there somewhere. It's there. And I'm like, oh, it's gone. I've lost the book. So I'm still that. But I'm still going to put it out there. I'm still going to send it to an agent. I'm still believing in myself enough to think actually what I've written there is worthy. And then when it comes back and he says yes, and then a publisher says yes, and then people start to buy it, I think, I have to believe in myself at my kitchen table 5 years ago for this series of events to happen. And when you asked about who is Paul Ferris, I tell you what I'm very willing to do. I'm always very willing to take a long view. So when the football finished, I didn't just run and jump and go there. I actually said, what do I want to be? And I remember saying to my then girlfriend, I think I want to go to work in a tracksuit. That's what I want. I think I want. And she said, well, what should I say? I think physiotherapists do that. And she said, okay. And we got on that talking, and you say, well, that's going to take us 4 years. And you say, well, Ed, you know what? If it takes us 4 years, we're on a journey. And once you start the journey, then you're in the process and you can enjoy it. As soon as I started my physio degree, in my head, I was a physiotherapist. As soon as I started my law stuff, in my law, I was a barrister. As soon as I started typing 2 fingers on my kitchen table, in my head, I was a published author and I was going to go into a bookshop. And now, what is that?
Self-belief.
So it must be there. It is there.
100%. Whatever I've heard from you, and even if I didn't know you before this, I would say this is a story of self-belief. Because whatever you start...
Self-doubt, I would have said first, but self-doubt and self-belief, yeah.
But why do you say self-doubt?
Because the doubt's there. The doubt is always there.
That's because you want to be the best at what you are. You know, even as an author, for a first-time author to be a best-selling author, right? Your book, was...
That book was a best-selling book in weeks, and it became... Right. It became the Sunday Times Sports Book of the Year, the Times Sports Book of the Year.
Exactly.
The British Sports Autobiography of the Year. And you're down there getting this award, and I keep thinking, 2 fingers at my kitchen table. That's what this book is. It's 2 fingers at my kitchen table, and I lost it 6 times. I had to get my son out of bed to come and help me find it. But maybe it is self-belief. I think look, if you're going to be a professional footballer at 16 and a barrister in your 40s or whatever, and a bestseller, there has to be self-belief. But I'm wrecked with doubt. Always have been. Always. We talk about humour. We haven't talked about too much humour in this particular, but I use humour as a crutch almost to get me past some of that, like a social insecurity.
I think humour is a superpower because, when people have a sense of humour, it shows very high level of IQ and EQ both. Because you read the room, you read the room very well, Paul. I mean, I've not met a single person who has a bad word to say about you, and you're very admired in the industry. In an industry where it's very competitive. Everybody, talks. People will be good to you on your face, but I've not heard a bad word about you in the industry ever. From anybody.
Well, you're not talking in the right circles then, Samir. No, I think that I remember reading something. When you go through these periods of self-help books and different things. When I don't know, everybody does it, but I certainly did, trying to find your confidence from somewhere else. But this is many years ago, and I can remember there was a time in my life when I was a young boy when I almost needed everybody to like me. I wanted people to like me. I wanted to be popular and be friendly. But then I read this book once, and it's probably a really old cliche and an old saying, but there was a book and it basically said, I think it was, your reputation is none of your business. Have you heard that?
Yeah, absolutely.
And it's a really powerful thing to if you take that on board, it just relieves you from everything. Because then all I do now in my life is I try to be as honest as I can when I walk into a room. I try to be as friendly as I can because I want people to have a nice time when you're in the room, because we're all on this planet for a very short time. Why would we be miserable with each other or try and get what? So that's what I try to do. How that's received is not my business.
Yeah, it is. I know what you're saying.
Do you know what I mean? So if I leave the room and somebody says I like him, and somebody else says I don't like him, it hasn't affected my day one way or the other. It doesn't mean I don't care, but it hasn't affected it. So it's nice to hear that you think that people would say nice things about you, but actually that should come from, in my opinion, that should come from just being a human being. If you're going to be a human being and have empathy and have sympathy for other human beings, you're going to leave a room, and most people are going to connect with that, because most of us want to connect with other. I think we do. I mean, there are 1 or 2 people you meet and you think, well, I hope I never see you again in my life. That would be too soon. But I haven't really met many people like that.
Did you say that when you met me the first time?
No, I didn't. Well, it's like the Mutual Admiration Society. I said to you the first time I talked to you on a I think it was a Teams call we talked to you. I said it was a pleasure talking to you, and I meant it was a pleasure talking to you, because the energy that you gave off, the enthusiasm that you gave off, the sincerity that you gave off, that's what's missing with a lot of people. I mean, it's missing with a lot of people. Now, I might be classed, I suppose, if you read the books, if you read The Boy in the Shed, and people say that's a deeply personal book, and it is a deeply personal book. If you move on...
But there's so much you can take from it.
But if you move on to The Magic in the Tin, which is a book about dealing with prostate cancer. So people say to me, The Boy in the Shed is a personal book. I say, you haven't seen anything yet. You need to read The Magic in the Tin, because that is 7 chapters about my penis.
Yeah.
It's like that's like Alan Shearer did the forewords for The Boy in the Shed, and he did the foreword for The Magic in the Tin, which is about me dealing with prostate cancer. And he rang me up because he got an early copy, and he said, Paul, this book is fantastic, but I didn't think it was possible for one person to speak about his penis for 7 chapters of a book. And I said, I think it was 9 chapters of the book. But that's, some people would say that's oversharing. I think that's humanity. I think that's me saying to another human being out there, this is what, when you see me smiling in a room, I'm going home to put a penis pump on to try and see my erection for the first time in 3 years or 4 years, or I'm struggling with my body image because I'm no longer the person that I was before. But why wouldn't you tell people that? Why wouldn't you tell them? I think we live in a world where people are frightened to be vulnerable sometimes. Yeah. But actually, I think there's strength in vulnerability because it gets a power. Because if I just tell people what's happening with me, who can hurt me? No one can hurt me, really.
Paul, one thing very interesting about your life, and obviously I've read your books, I've seen what you've gone through. You had a change in identity multiple times. Like your entire identity as a person has completely been wiped off, and you started again on new one. So you say, let's go back and see. You're a footballer, right? And now you're no longer a footballer, and you started training for
Physiotherapist.
As a physiotherapist, and then you started doing that, and you completely wiped the slate, and you became a barrister.
Yeah,
a different life altogether. Then when Alan Shearer called you, you went back to be a physio again.
Well, I was back as the head of sports medicine, so I probably would have killed some of the physio again. Didn't practice physio. I went back as kind of an assistant with him. He was going to run the football side, and I was going to run the sports medicine side.
So
and then the books have been the biggest thing when you talk about an identity change.
So it's very interesting, If you look at Paul Ferris as an author, so when you took the decision of I will write a book, what made you think I'll write a book? And like you said, at 58, you were typing in your kitchen with 2 fingers.
Yeah.
What actually got you to do that?
Well, the Boy in the Shed was an easy thing. I had a heart attack. So I had a heart attack at 48. Right in the middle of a busy life. I was some chest pains, some signs. I was my GP. I was talking to them saying I've got this family history of heart disease, and they were saying you're too young, and all that sort of stuff was going on for 2 weeks. But I was definitely I knew there was something going on, but it was still a shock when it happened. So I'm driving. I was actually an old footballer friend of mine to an event to meet all the other players. It was a testimonial game, and we were at Close House where now sometimes my office is there. As a golf course in the northeast, and I don't play golf, but I was driving him there, and we were having a conversation. It was about SpeedFlex, and it was a bit of a fractious conversation, and I could feel my chest tighten, and actually there was a moment he went off and left me in the car, and it felt like someone was putting a burning spear right into my chest, and I couldn't, and I felt like I'm not going to get this. This is not right. I'm going to be in trouble here. So I tried to contact him, and the phone, there's no phone signal, and I couldn't get him. And eventually I got him, got in the car, and instead of calling an ambulance, we started to drive towards the hospital. And I'm in the passenger seat, and he's driving along, and he called the ambulance service, and they're saying, how old is the gentleman? And he's saying, I'm saying I'm 48, and he's saying, and on a scale of 1 to 10, what is your pain level? And I said it's a 9.5, and the guy in the car is going, it's 9.5, it's 9.5. Like, I said, look, calm down, I'm the one having the heart attack. Like, just let me panic about that. But the next thing, these paramedics are there, they're giving you morphine, they're putting the blues and twos on, and you're in hospital, and you wake up, and the surgeon says to you, so where were you when you were having the heart attack? And I said, have I had a heart attack? And he said, yeah, you had a 99% blockage of your main coronary artery, your LAD artery. You're very lucky. It's the one they call the Widowmaker. You're very lucky that you got here. 3 days before, I was on a flight to Dubai, and you said I don't like to be away from home. Yeah. I flew to Dubai in the morning, had in the afternoon, got there in the evening, sort of went to bed, I think, briefly, had the meetings in the morning, and then flew back out again. If I had the heart attack on that flight,
game over.
I would have been in trouble. So when we joke about me going in and going out, that fear is still there with me. But back to your original point, once I had that heart attack, and I realised my mum died very young. My mum died when I was, when she was very young, and I don't know enough about her, and it really hurts me that I don't know enough about her. I don't know enough about her childhood. I don't know what she was like as a girl. I don't know anything about those things that I should have known about. And I wanted to write for my kids. The Boy in the Shed was called The Boy in the Shed because my mum had this heart attack when I was 6 and I slept beside her and I didn't know. And she just disappeared. And then she came back from hospital 2 weeks later because they let the heart attack take its course in those days. They just sedated you. So and now they would get in and they would get a stent in there and open it up so you don't get any damage. In those days they didn't know, so they just thought this person needs to just relax. But actually what was happening is the heart attack's wreaking havoc with her. So she came home and my mum couldn't walk from here to that door when I was a kid. So I'd have to hold her. And she's only a young woman and she'd have to sit down and so she was always going to go. Now, I wrote The Boy in the Shed because she'd send me out to play. And instead of going out to play, I would climb up on an old coal shed behind the house and I would watch her through the kitchen window because in my 6-year-old mind, God tried to take her when I was asleep and I wouldn't let him take her and I was going to guard her and watch her. And so that's why the book's called The Boy in the Shed. And I wrote it genuinely for my children and for my grandchildren to let them know who their granddad was and who their dad was. Not who he was in terms of he played for Newcastle or he did, but who he was in here, like
as a person.
Who he was inside here, who you come from, and the family you come from here, because I think that's important for people's grounding and what they when my children navigate this modern world, it's not the world I navigated, but they should still navigate it with the values that my mum gave me that I hope I give them. So that was what The Boy in the Shed started off as, and then it turned into a book of half comedy, half a mother and son's relationship, half football journey, half this journey to go off and be a barrister. And you said about, changing my career.
Identity.
It's
It's completely
so I'm at Newcastle United. I'm a physiotherapist. I've got a very good job, and there are two of us. And my best friend Derek Wright, the other physio, got on like a house on fire, and I'm there, and I rehabbed Alan Shearer, who was at the time at the height of his career. He had got a really nasty injury in 1996, 97, and I rehabbed him and put my heart and soul into it. And he was the biggest asset at the football club. And he became my friend because you just spend every day with this person. And he didn't become my friend because he was Alan Shearer, famous footballer. He became my friend because he actually had the same values in here as I did, and I recognised that in him, and he recognised that in me. So we had a connection there, and it was patient and therapist became friends, and that was great. At the end of that year, the manager left, and Ruud Gullit came in. A new manager came in, who decided that he was going to fight with Alan Shearer. They were going to butt heads, but because of that, I'm then perceived as being Alan Shearer's friend, but I'm a physiotherapist who's just rehabbed the club's biggest asset. So I think that's of great value. Yeah. And before I know it, there's little whispers saying, "Oh, you need to be careful around Alan because they don't like Alan," and they think, "Oh, I'm getting caught up in politics here," and I don't do that. That's not who I am. I just do patient therapist, best work I can do. Thank you very much, and I will move on. So during that period, I thought, wow, on the whim of a manager who might not like a player, and their egos might clash, I might lose my job here, and I don't want that. I don't want that for my life. And so I started to think, I'm going to. Some of it's stupidity. You said change of identity. I started to think, what can I do here to better myself? And genuine, and if you're a physiotherapist at a football club, in order to better yourself, you would do a master's degree in sports medicine, or you would do a master's degree in manipulation. I did a master's degree in history of ideas. If you can tell me what that is. So I don't even think the course exists anymore, but I did a master's degree for 3 years at night school while I was a physio at Newcastle, and I got my master's degree in history of idea, which is essentially a history of philosophy and art and religion and all those things. Fascinatingly interesting, but it's not what you want to do if you want to better yourself. So it's not really about bettering yourself at this point. And I was trying to get a pay rise. And I've told you this story before, of the chief executive. And Derek, my friend, was as poor as me at negotiating, and we were sitting trying to get a pay rise, and everything we said, he just kept saying no pay rise, no pay rise. And I said, exasperated, but I've got a master's degree now. And he said, well, why didn't you say? What's that in? And I thought, oh, God. And I said, oh, it's in history of ideas. And he said, well, that will get you 50% of fuck all in life, won't it? And I remember looking at him thinking, you horrible, horrible man, but actually you're quite right. You're quite right. Not how I would have put it, but you're quite right. And I'm doing a master's degree in philosophy is not going to help me as a physio. And I went home to my wife, long suffering, I'll call her now at this point. That's not her name. But I went home to Geraldine and I said, look, if I'm doing master's degrees in philosophy and history of art, I don't want to be a physiotherapist. Clearly, I want to do something else. And she said, well, what is it you want to do? It has. You're right. It's self-belief. I thought it was self-doubt. It's not self-doubt. It's self-belief. I said, I want to be a barrister. And I think I've always wanted to be a barrister, but I've never really had the confidence that I could do it. And it's the toughest. It was kind of what can I think is this is the toughest thing that you can do as a 40-year-old here. I'll go and be a surgeon, or I'll go and be a barrister, or I'll go and be and she said, well, how are we going to do that, Paul? And I said, well, actually, we've got we had this lovely home. It was a great home. It's no longer there. We had this lovely home, the old post office. It was beautiful, like a picture postcard, like in this little country village, and it had 2 staircases. And I said, well, why don't we just block the wall off there, and then we'll put a kitchen on the back of that. We'll borrow that from the bank, put a kitchen on the back of it. We'll sell that, and then I'll live off the proceeds until I become the world's next great barrister. And she just went, yeah, that's a great idea. I'll do that. so as a physio at the football club with my master's degree in history of ideas, I'm now going to Champions League games and the players are saying, what are you doing? I'm saying, well, I'm just reading my law books at the back of them. I'm thinking, why is our physiotherapist reading law books? But I would go to the game, come back to the hotel, and then study in the hotel. Or I would not volunteer to go to trips away so I could study and do
the fun trips. So you won't go for the fun.
Great. So the fun trips. So the other physio had the best time of his life, Derek. I remember one particular trip. We're actually in Manchester today. One particular trip, I was supposed to go to Dubai for 5 days of winter training, which is basically in those days 5 days of drinking and having a nice time. Yeah. And I swapped with him, and he said the only thing you have to do is you have to drive my son to Manchester because he wants to go to a Slipknot concert. So I had to go to a Slipknot concert to get out of going to Dubai for 5 years. But actually, I didn't go to the concert. I went into the car park in Manchester and just sat in the car while his son went to the concert. And I did my studying in the car with all these strange looking people going to the concert. These very weird and wonderful people going to the Slipknot. Not Slipknot. What were they called? Rammstein. Rammstein concert. Very heavy. It was Rammstein. It's Rammstein. My son works for Slipknot. That's why I said that. But I'm Rammstein. So I did all that. And then there comes a point when you have to leave the football club. And that's a scary point in itself as well, because you're leaving your salary and you're leaving everything, but you've got some money in the bank. But actually, the barrister route was fraught with difficulty because a solicitor route's a straightforward route, a barrister route, we went in to do the law stuff. I'm studying law part-time. And again, I'll just go back, Samir. I'm studying law part-time, distance learning. It's a tough way to do law. Yeah. Law is a tough subject because it's not tough academically. It's tough volume of work. Yeah. So you've got to be on top of the volume, otherwise you just get lost. Yeah. So if you go and do a law degree and you're not willing to read and you're not going to do that, you're not going to go far with that. You've got to do the work. So I went into this room as the physio at the football club, walked into a room, and there are 90 people in the room, and my first thought was, they're all brighter than me, these people. Everybody needs to have, what am I doing in this room? And I've got a master's degree in history of ideas. What's that for? Anyway, but I've got that already, so I've got proof that I'm bright enough to be in the room. Yeah. But still, I'm not. And maybe that's my driver. Maybe it's a competitive thing. I think actually I'm going to prove to you that I'm. And actually on that course, it was fascinating. We would meet at college every 6 weeks, and they would give you a big bundle of work to say you need to do that work, and then come back and we'll give you the next 6 weeks bundle, and then we'll give you the next 6 weeks bundle. 90 people the first week. Came back the first 6 weeks, maybe about 75 people. Came back the second 6 weeks, maybe about 60 people. Came back the next week, maybe about 50 people. Came back to the end of the course, there was about 20 of us that passed it, and I'm very proud to say I was one of the people who got the better marks in it. And I always say to my kids, just stay the course.
Yeah, I mean, and honestly, Paul, this is so important. People just
stay the course.
When things get tough, a lot of people just quit. I'm telling you, when I was doing my PhD, and I was working full time. So I used to work for a back office, and I still remember this. I was doing my PhD. I was getting fucking burnt at work because, I was head of talent acquisition in a contact center space. We couldn't fucking fill in people. The number of people that were leaving were more than the number of people we could hire. There was no way we could. We was running a treadmill. Yeah. So I was getting burnt out. I was working 70, 80 hours a week. And I had my PhD guide who used to, I would go back to him and he'll give me fucking read this and come back, read this and come back. And one of the days I said, I need some time to do this because I'm doing a full-time job. He says, that's not my fucking problem. Who asked you to do a PhD?
Yeah.
If you want the person. If you want that degree, which is the highest degree a university gives you, you best fucking put in your hours or quit. Yeah, you're not doing me a fucking favor. Samir, I've forgotten this actually. I enrolled on the law course, the distance learning course. I enrolled on it the year before I did it, and the books arrived at my home, and I opened the books and I said to my wife, again, I can't do this, and I didn't do it. I actually forgot about it. And those books sat in my home for a year. Torture me. I'm looking at them thinking, you backed out. Why have you backed out of that?
just because you didn't believe you could do it, you just left, you didn't do it. And I actually didn't take up my place. And then I rang them up again 6 months later and said, I'm ready to do it now, would you please accept me next year? So so when the books first came in, my first instinct that I said was just, I'm not good enough. But then there's something inside me that thinks, yeah, you are, come on. You know you are, you can do this. And what's the worst that happens if you can't? I always say that, but even now, someone said to me about, if SpeedFlex finished tomorrow, if something else happened, whatever it is, what's the worst that can happen? Well, actually, when I was 21, I lost my job, I lost my home, my mum died. I'm guaranteeing that the worst that'll happen might not touch quite where I was at that particular point. No qualifications, nowhere to go. So I always think, well, actually, you know what? I'll be okay. I've got that fear, but I'll be okay. But the law stuff, you said about I feel like the same person. I feel like the same. I mean, when I was 16, walking around Newcastle, this is a genuine thing. No qualifications. You would, and this is an English thing and an Irish thing. The English people would say to me genuinely, "Where are you from?" And I'd say, "Well, I'm from Ireland." They'd say, "Oh, you must be thick," because there's this thing that Irish people must be thick, and I think, "Oh, maybe I am thick. Yeah, maybe I am a bit thick." And then they would say, "And what do you do for a living?" And I would say, I'm a professional footballer. And they'd say, oh, you must be really thick. And I think, well, maybe I am really thick. I'm a professional footballer and I'm Irish. And I'm walking around Newcastle thinking I must be the thickest person in the city for a while because everybody's telling me I was. That's the same person who became a barrister and a master's degree in the sea. I had those brains. That was all there. Nothing changed. And the competitive nature of being a footballer, that same sense of self-belief, I thought it was self-doubt, self-belief, is still there when you set the book of the barrister stuff down and you're not going to do it for a year, but a year later you come back and say, that's not going to beat me, I'm going to make sure I do that. It's still there whenever you go into the room with 90 people and then you're only one of 20 who's there at the finish. And it's still there when you decide to type in 2 fingers, more in hope, but with a bit of belief that actually I think a big publisher's going to take this book from me. And again, Samir, that happened 10 years before that. I wrote a novel called An Irish Heartbeat that no one took. So I sent it off to lots of people. And again, I'm going to say, I sent it off to lots of people and I thought it had great merit and no one took it. So when I'm writing The Boy in the Shed, it's again part of me thinking, actually, I know no one took that, but I think they might take this. And actually, The Boy in the Shed has been written, The Magic in the Tin has been written, Once Upon a Tune has been written, but in the middle of those, I have 2 full manuscripts, one called The Man in 119 and one called An Ugly Game, that no one has taken yet. And every day I look at them and think, someone's going to take that. Someone's definitely going to take that because and they just don't know yet. They just so there is. I've now gone from thinking I was full of self-doubt to thinking I'm a complete egomaniac. I just keep, but no, I believe in the writing. I believe, I think this is Steve. I mean, I've read some Stephen King stuff about how to write, and I think he'd said something like, let's get this out of the way first. If you've written anything and anyone's ever paid you money for it, do you have talent? And I think, okay, I'll take that. Stephen King just told me I have talent. And that's that. So, and I've written stuff and people have paid money for it. So therefore, why won't they do it for the next one?
You have self-belief. Now, obviously, you remember this movie Matrix, and he says, I remember Keanu Reeves at that point, he's called Neo. And Morpheus, the guy says, what's happening now? He says he started believing in himself. And that's what's changed. So the entire context changes when he starts believing in... Yeah. And that's where we're at. One of the most interesting things I read in your book, The Boy in the Shed, and that's always been... that's something I wanted to ask you. You see, you mentioned somewhere that somebody was chasing you and they were just being nasty to you.
Yeah.
And you came back to you, and then people threw petrol bombs or something in your house.
Yeah.
And you said, why are people doing this?
And my mum.
And you made a very powerful statement that says, your mom said, Paul, they don't know who you are.
Yeah.
And more importantly, they don't want to know.
Yeah. And then she said, and if they did know, they wouldn't do this to you.
Right. So if that was your childhood, right, in Ireland, do you think that shaped the way you looked at the world?
Yeah, I could. Yeah, my mum was. I mean, it's easy to say because she died when I was quite young. But it was just such a weak in physicality, but just these pearls of wisdom as a person. Just like a working class woman who didn't have an education, but you couldn't. you couldn't get a thing past her. She would, if you said something to her and your voice was slightly changed, she'd say, why have you changed the tone of voice talking to me? She was like really astute, and you're like, oh, sorry, Mum, I'll not do that again. But she would, I remember coming in one day, and I don't know if I put this in the boys, I don't think I did. And I used to play football all the time, and I'm covered in mud. So I'm head to toe, like covered in mud. And this kid, who's from a different religion to me, just said, oh, you're like a filthy, dirty, he called me some sectarian names, because and I went home to my mum and I was crying, and I said, look, oh, so-and-so says that I'm like a filthy, dirty thing. And she said, rightly or wrong, she said, go back out there and walk around to him and just say to him that your dirt is easily washed off. But and what she was saying is she comes from nothing, his family are, and she just had that ability, and you're not, and you are something, and she was very good at that. Now, the other thing we keep going back to the self-belief. The self-doubt comes from my mum as well, because some of the wisdom, I think it was flawed. Now, when I look back at it, I wish I could talk to her now about it, but my mum would say to me, and maybe your culture, Samir, I think we had this conversation about culture. My mum had a very deferential attitude. So when I was a kid, if my next door neighbour, who I knew every day, she was my next door neighbour, she was called Annie Harrison, and she was a lovely woman, and she knocked our door one day, and I opened the door, and Annie was there, and I said, Mum, it's Annie. And my mum walked up and hit me in the back of the head and said, it's Mrs. Harrison to you. And she was almost saying, you haven't earned the right to call her. And I think she was wrong. And looking back now, and because a lot of times in my life, I've always given people maybe a bit more than I should have done. Maybe a bit. I've gone into a room and been a little bit too deferential, and maybe given people a bit more respect than possibly some people have deserved in life. It's not a bad thing, but I'm just thinking as a pearl of wisdom, I think she got that wrong, and I think it made me a little bit more what's the word? Too reserved, almost to push myself forward. I'm not quite worthy of that, because you get this smack in the head because you call someone by their first name,
Paul, it's so interesting to see somebody who's changed careers so many times and excel in all of them. You would, if I were to look at it, you would be proud of that one goal you scored for Newcastle, right? We see that. I remember seeing on LinkedIn recently. It's 40 years. How many years was that?
It's, goodness me, it's 1984.
Yeah.
So it's 41 years
41
ago.
years, I saw that. So 41 years back. And people are still talking about that goal. It makes you feel good, doesn't it?
It makes you feel good, but I would be really, really disappointed if I got to 60 and that was all there was. Like, that was my life.
Absolutely.
I think if someone had said to me, you're 60 years old now, and all we talked about was 5 years at Newcastle United, I would think, well, that was when I was 20. I didn't even know who I was then. I was 16 years old to 21. There's been so much in between. Bringing up kids, bringing up your family. Biggest achievements in my life. The same girl I met when I was 14 years old is still with me. What on earth she's doing? Someone needs to check her out, but she's still there. Imagine you're talking about me living that. So you go from being a footballer, you're practically homeless. You're back again to be a physiotherapist. You decide you're going to do this silly master's degree. You go and be a barrister. You actually, but I haven't talked about this. Stay the course. I jumped off being a barrister in a very, very prestigious chambers to go back into a very...
So let's
go back in there. This girl is still here. Like, she's having to live... She must have thought, when she met me when we were 4, she must have thought I wasn't expecting that. I wasn't expecting that journey, But so that's an achievement in itself.
But she must be very proud of you.
Well, I'm very proud of her. So I don't know if... I think she is. I mean, she's the person that you spend, as you get older... and your world shrinks a little bit. I look at her and I think, actually, that's an amazing journey. That's an amazing journey that we're still on. That actually, and would I go back and swap any of it? No, I probably wouldn't swap one bit of it.
Let's talk about that call that you got from Alan Shearer when you were... So, I mean, obviously we've spoken about this in the past. You're a barrister now. You're very good at what you do. You got that opportunity which a lot of people would die for,
Yeah.
And you get a call from Alan Shearer.
Yeah. So the barrister journey, the easiest part of the barrister journey for me was studying law to convert to law while I was going around with Newcastle United, getting that, but converting to law was no bother. Going to bar school for a year and learning how to be a barrister was no bother. Trying to get a pupillage, which is what you need to get to be a barrister, is like gold. And everybody says at the time, don't do this, there are no pupillages. And I'm like, again, it must be self-belief. I'm going to get one of them. Or it's just delusion, but I'll get one. And then Samir, you go, I mean, I can remember getting an interview for pupillage was like gold. I remember going for an interview at Chambers in 2 Bedford Row in London, really prestigious Chambers. And I did the first interview, and it was 3 or 4 barristers, I think, in the first interview, firing questions at you. And I thought it had gone quite well. And I went home and they said, you've got a second interview. And you go to the second interview, and I opened the door, and there are maybe 9 barristers and a judge in this room. And you've got a little case that you could be given on the day before, and you've got to present this case to them. And they're firing things at you, and I'm going back and doing whatever it is. I brought Geraldine down the night before to London for a trip, and I'm standing in the hotel room, my hands behind my back, naked. I don't need to put naked in there, but I'm standing there, and she's in the bed. I'm rehearsing the case. And I'm not even thinking about Jared. I'm thinking she's here to help me. But I rehearsed it so much that I knew when I left that I was going to get that offer, the pupillage. There was 600 applicants for that job, and at 42 years old, from the working class background, they gave it to me. They offered me it. I didn't take it because my family were in Newcastle, but I was offered one in Park Court Chambers in Leeds, which is now New Park Court Chambers, a very prestigious set in the north in Leeds, closest I could get to Newcastle, and I got offered that, and I think there were 300 applicants for that, and I know that once you get that, that's you on your way. And I was working with the most incredible barristers in Leeds, and I was loving it, and I loved every minute of it. I was travelling back and forward to Leeds every day. I didn't love that. I was getting up in the morning, getting the train, back on the train that night, having to get my son out of bed to help me with the spreadsheets and all these bits and pieces and putting all the bits down because I was a bit of a technophobe. But I was in the trenches, but enjoying being in the trenches. And I was at Leeds Station in 2008, and the Euro 2008 was on, and Alan Shearer was a pundit on the TV because he wasn't going to be a manager. Yeah. And he rang me, and he said, I'm going to be a manager. I've decided. And I said, oh, you're not? I thought you were going to be a pundit. And he said, no, I'm going to be a manager. And I'm going to join Southampton Football Club, and I want you to run the sports medicine sports side of the football club. And then if we leave there and go to Newcastle or England, we'll go on this journey together. And I sat down, and because I was doing the barrister stuff and not training, I had a pinstripe suit on, a little button on my suit just popped off like that and rolled over the side of the thing. And I sat down and I said, Alan, I'm a barrister now. And he said, yeah, I was always going to ask you. And I said, you should have asked me before I sold half my house. Nearly killed myself studying law for 4 years. And he said, look, think about it. And I thought, I'm not going to do this because this is too big a journey I'm on. And I got on the train at Leeds, and by the time I got off at Newcastle, I rang him up and said, where are we meeting these people? And the following day I met them in his home on a Saturday morning, and they were going to buy Southampton Football Club, and they were offering him the earth, and they asked me what my salary was, and I doubled what I thought I could ask for, and they said, that sounds great. And I thought, had that come off, that would have transformed my family's life overnight. Because in my head, he would have got a 3-year contract at Southampton. If it goes okay, you get another one somewhere else. If it goes okay, you might get another one. Maybe you last 10 years, but it's 10 years of sizable income. And more importantly, it's Alan Shearer. It's someone I respect immensely.
And he's a very good friend of yours.
And he's my friend. And he's asking me, of all the people he's met, he's asking me. And I think my ego maybe wanted to go back into football because I had unfinished business. I got very excited and I said, yeah, I'm going to do that. I went into my chambers on the Monday and said, I'm leaving. I know you've given me this job and this opportunity, but I'm leaving. And the brilliant barrister just said to me, Paul, I'm the only person you've told. Give yourself a week to think about it because it's a big deal to go home and think about it. And I went home and he called me in a week's time and I said, look, I haven't changed my mind. But actually, the week after that, I'm watching Sky Breaking News. And along the Sky Breaking News, this ticker tape comes along the bottom and it says Southampton's been taken over. And I think, oh, thank goodness for that. But it's not been taken over by the people that we were talking to. It's been taken over by Marcus Liebner and some other company. So I'm now a barrister who's not practicing law, physiotherapist who doesn't practice physiotherapy, and in a mad panic I wrote an Irish Heartbeat that just sitting writing, thinking I must be a writer, I'll try and write, just panicking. And Alan got a job at Newcastle United. When I'm genuinely running out of money because I'd budgeted for a period of time. Yeah. That budget's being eaten into. Nothing's happened. I'm now extending 6 months, 7 months, 8 months past my budget deadline. So I'm watching this. We've got a house and a mortgage. I've got a half a house actually, and you're paying a mortgage on it. And I'm watching it slipping away. And then he got a job at Newcastle, and I went with him. So if you look at Alan Shearer and his 8 weeks at Newcastle United, you'll see like a slimmer, healthier version of me standing just about a foot away from him in case it went wrong, so no one knows I'm there. So no one knows I'm there. But I was there, and at the end of it, I had a brilliant time. And the end of a really terrible season, and we had 8 weeks there, and he put his heart and soul into it. And I can remember going into work. I was going to work at 7:30 in the morning, and I'm leaving his office at 8:30 at night, and he's saying to me, "Oh, an early day, you get an early finish, is it?" And I'm like, "Come on, I need to go home." And he put everything into it. And we didn't manage to keep them up, But we met the then owner and had an agreement to be the management team for the next 3 years. In principle, nothing signed, but in principle. Salaries, all those bits and pieces. And I'll cut right to it. It didn't happen. So I left Newcastle United for the very last time. I left that ground, was the happiest I've ever been, because I thought, I'm going to get this a massive contract. It's going to be glory all the way. So when I left, I was happy in my ignorance. And I left, and we never heard from them again. And then I'm in a really strange place. Then I'm running out of money. Alan is phoning me up and saying, I'm thinking about going to Sheffield Wednesday. I'm speaking to Cardiff. I'm speaking to different people. And I'm getting my hopes up, thinking, here we go. And then it just didn't happen. And as the time moved on, I realised he wasn't going to do it. And he started to do more of the punditry stuff. And I thought, wow, I'm definitely in a bit of a hole here now. So I had to go and have a very uncomfortable conversation with Long Suffering. Her name is Geraldine, by the way. It's not Long Suffering. With her, and say, the half a house that we have here, it needs to go. Because if it doesn't, the bank are going to come after us and we're going to be in trouble, because we've only got, and we were very lucky, we put it up for sale and we sold it for a reasonable profit within 6 weeks. If it had gone to 12 weeks, I think I was in trouble. But then we moved into rented accommodation. But what I'm proud of there, I'm not proud of any of my behaviour there, I'm proud of the fact that my kids didn't even know that happened. My kids were oblivious to all of that. They were having this great life and they were having these great holidays and great things happening. And my wife said to me, we'll move into the rented house, shall we just rent that little small house over there? I said, no. Let's rent a big house over there, because I need to rent the big house for my mentality that actually that's where I'm going again. I don't want to be. And she's like, and then again, she's like, yeah, okay.
Abundance,
so, yeah. So our kids at the time when we had nothing and I'm losing everything, lived in the best house they've ever lived in for 18 months, and they're like, oh, I didn't realise that. But people would say that's daft, but mentally it was important to me. It was important to me to know that this is the world that I'm not going back. I'm not going back there. I'm going that way. And the day people say to me all the time, oh, when Alan Shearer, do you wish you'd never done that? Do you wish you'd never jumped off your law stuff with Alan Shearer? And I actually say never, because it was Alan. He was destined to be a manager. I had total belief in him, and certainly at the table, I had total belief in him. And I can remember sitting in a restaurant with him and his wife, Lania and Geraldine, and we were sitting just before I'd going in the Monday to give up my law stuff. And his wife said, don't do it. And I said, I want to do it. And Alan said, well, he's a big boy, he can make his own. And he's right. Yeah. And if I ever speak to him now, people say to me, oh, I never say to Alan, oh, God, I wish I hadn't. That's a terrible thing that happened. Because it was an amazing opportunity. And I would have done it. I would do it again in a heartbeat. It just never worked out. But actually, it led me to SpeedFlex. It led me to...
I was going to come to that.
It led me to the books, and I don't mind saying, Alan Shearer's 40th birthday party was at the end of that year of, I might be going here, I might be going there. My house was going to go.
How old were you then?
I was 45. So I'm 45 years old. Alan's having a party at his house, and it's his 40th birthday party, and we're going to go, and I get ready to go with Geraldine. And I can remember clearly, she walked downstairs in the bedroom, and I walked downstairs with her. And then I walked back upstairs again. I climbed into bed with my clothes on. And she said, what are you doing? I said, I can't go, because I've just ruined her life. I've destroyed everything. I can't go to this event where everybody who's wealthy and everybody who's successful and anybody at Newcastle is going to be there, and we're in trouble, like real trouble. And she said, you can't let him down. You got to go. And I didn't want to let him down. So I actually went to his 40th birthday party, and this leads to SpeedFlex. Actually, I went to his 40th birthday party, and it's in his back garden. It's a beautiful place. And I walked in, and Kevin Keegan, who was my manager and a former player that I played with, and a really honest man and a decent man. Kevin Keegan was the first man that I met at the party, and he had a pair of glasses on that you would wear. Those I don't know what they're called, aviator glasses, are they? Where you can see
the tinted ones, the mirrored.
You can see your reflection.
Yeah, the mirrored one.
I should have put it in the boy in the shed. First person I met when I walked in, I didn't want to go because and Kevin's just looking at me, and I can see my reflection in his eyes there, and he said, and I was saying yes, and I became a barrister, and yes, and I did that, and yes, I've written, and he said, what are you doing for money? And I remember looking at him thinking, I can see myself lying here. I said, well, he said, you have no, what are you doing? How are you going to support your family? I remember thinking, Christ, don't be so honest. And I thought I'm going to cry. I thought, and I said, you're right. What am I going to do? I don't know. And I was standing at this party talking to a very unassuming man. and he was small in stature, and he looked like a David McCreary, a footballer I used to play with. And he listened to me chatting away and didn't put himself forward in any way, shape or form, but just had a chat. And about 2 days later, Alan Shearer rang me up and said, Graham Wiley, that you were speaking to at the party, wants to meet you. He has a proposition for you. And I thought, what on earth? And I knew who Graham Wiley was. Graham Wiley was hugely successful businessman in the Northeast.
He's on Sage.
He wrote Sage. He was Sage. He was Sage. So he wrote the program for Sage. One of the founders, and he was one of the first in the Northeast. I think he was a paper billionaire, excuse me. But he sold his shares for a huge amount of money. So everybody in the Northeast knew him. People in business would know him. But what would he be wanting to meet an unemployed physiotherapist, field footballer, unemployed barrister? But actually, I met him in his hotel. And he actually said to me, my friend invests for me in safe products and big products in America, and he also invests in startups and different things. And his friend is an orthopedic surgeon, and he's developed a piece of medical kit called SpeedFlex. And here's what it does. And I thought, well, come on, Graham, just calm yourself down there, because if Graham would have told you could have made your tea and made your dinner and done it, he was selling it like this is the meat. And I was thinking, yeah, it doesn't sound all that to me. And he said, would you travel to America for me and give me an opinion as to whether you think this has got any merit, or whether you think it's nonsense or whatever, and I'll pay you a fee for going. And I certainly could have done with a fee. And he said, with your background in professional sport, just go there. So I travelled to Greenville, South Carolina, and into a teaching hospital. Met a lovely man, Dr. Jim Silliman, who was the orthopedic surgeon, a couple of other guys, Darren Holmes, former baseball player. Actually, I forgot about Sanjeev Javi, a guy I met. He was a lovely guy from India, but I'll talk to you about him in a second. And Joe Worley, the engineer, and they brought me into like the physiotherapy department, and they had all the normal bits of kit there, and 4 big black columns of the lever arm bolted into the floor. Didn't look that exciting, to be quite frank, when I saw it. And they had a little TV screen up on the wall behind, and it was kind of managed for me, but I recognised that. But I'm there as a physiotherapist to give it an honest opinion. So I'm going to rip this thing apart. That's what I'm going to. Because if you come to Newcastle United to sell me a product in the 90s, I'm the person you're not getting past. So you get all the rest of the staff are saying yes, and I'm saying but let me tell you why we don't need that. So you would hate me, you would hate me. So Graham sent the right person really for that. And honestly, they brought a guy in, and he had Parkinson's disease, and he shuffled in, and he was off balance, and he was struggling, and he's about 75 years old, and he put his hands on his lever arm, just a lever arm, and he started to do like a power clean and press type movements. It looked like he was doing nothing very much, feet on the floor, moving that, but I watched his heart rate, and his heart rate was going 75, 80, 85, and I'm a physiotherapist, and I know Parkinson's patients respond really well to exercise and intensity of exercise. It's never going to stop the Parkinson's, but it can slow it down and keep you. But actually, Parkinson's patients have lost their balance. So a Parkinson's patient, they shuffle because their balance mechanism's gone. So they're frightened to put things above their head. This guy was moving this thing because it was taking care of his balance, and fascinating to watch. He walked off, and this big guy came on, and he was huge. Like he was 20 stone, 25 stone, massive big guy. He lumbered onto this bit of kit, heart rate monitor on, didn't move a pin, started doing these big, wonderful exercises that this other guy was doing. I'm watching his heart rates going to 85. I'm thinking, hang on a second, you can't jog anymore because you've got 35 stone smashing down with gravity. And
that's the worst thing you can do in a gym.
Smashing down with gravity. So he's doing that. And I thought it's fascinating. And he walked off. But what really got me at the time, because I'd just come from professional sport, they brought 2 mixed martial arts fighters out, and they were like, you could see they were ripped. You could see their 6-packs under their tops, and they put the monitor, the heart rate monitor on, and they did a Tabata set, like a partnered up set, and one of them was gasping for breath, and I went out to talk to the other one, and he was actually physically being sick. And I just watched one bit of kit, no pins being moved, nothing happening there, challenge a guy who's effectively an athlete, the MMA fighter, and look after a guy who's got Parkinson's disease on the same bit of kit with no impact, no
changes to pins,
nothing like that. And so I then went, I thought, it looks all right. I then used it, and this challenge with SpeedFlex is this: you have to use it. So I then used it, and as soon as I used it, I recognised the features of it, which we'll probably not go into today, but I recognised the 3 or 4 features that made all of that happen. There's some very simple features that made all of that happen. But then I'm on a journey with SpeedFlex. I go home to Graham, and I say to Graham, this bit of kit I wrote a legal report. I said I think it's a viable product as a medical tool for people in hospital situations. I think it's a viable product for professional sport. I think it's a viable product for hospitality. I think it's a viable product for gyms. And he said, okay, if you feel that passionately about it, give me 1 year of your life. And you can always go back and be a barrister. And we'll form a company together. So you're going from nothing to this hugely successful businessman saying, I'd like to form a company with you.
Graham
Wiley, which is a remarkable thing. And
I remember seeing the Sage office, the
yeah,
glass. Oh man,
it's a remarkable thing. And but again, I bring that. I get him to invest in this product. I bring it home, and I'm not a businessman. I'm all those things, but I'm not a business. I'm learning how to be a businessman. But at that point, I'm footballer, barrister, writing a book, no one's ever read, all those things, but I'm not a businessman. This bit of kit comes back. We put it in Jesmond in Newcastle, 5 or 6 of them, and we think I'm going to invite every physiotherapist who's anybody to come along. From like Tottenham Hotspur would play Newcastle on a Saturday. I know there's a captive audience on a Friday night. The physio's in a hotel. I'll give him a ring. I know him. You come along and see this bit of kit, and you're going to fall over yourself when you see it. You're not going to fall over because it's going to take care of your balance. But anyway, and I did that with 3 or 4 physios, and to a man, each and every one of them said, "This is a remarkable bit of kit, Paul. How much is it?" And at that time, I said, "Well, it's £16,000 per column." I remember this very clearly because we had the charge because we were distributors for an American company. 16, and they said, "Whoa, our manager wanted me." I said, "Well, maybe if you buy 4 or 5 to get out. We're not doing that." Yeah. So that was and I've got Graham there looking at it saying, "Is that it? Is this what it is?" And I said, "No, watch what it does." And then he was like, there used to be an old advert for razors back in the day. Victor Kayam, it was so good I bought the company. They do the razors thing, and Graham was looking at this thing saying, "Is that what it is? What is it?" And I said, "Come and use it. You're a 45 at the time, 50-year-old businessman, Graham. When was the last time you exercised?" And he's like, 20 years ago. I said, "Well, then you're in trouble. You need to do something." And I got him on this bit of kit, very safely doing this exercise, and I watched his heart rate, and his heart rate went to like 90%, and I said, "Come and have a sit down." And he sat down, and I could see the heart rate monitor behind him, and and I know that the indicator of his fitness is how quickly he's going to recover. He's going to recover within 2 minutes and back to his heart rate stayed at 90%, and I was talking to him. I thought, I've killed Graham Wiley. I think I've killed Graham Wiley. And I sat there for 40 minutes with him while his heart rate didn't come back down. I said, This is now a serious thing. You're in trouble if that's happening to you, and you can't get your heart rate down. You're in real trouble. So he works on it and does it, and we love it, but we can't sell it because it's too expensive. So very quickly I thought, actually, you know what? When you ask about trying to self-belief or problems or whatever it is, I think, well, that can't be it. That can't be the end. There has to be another way. So the other way was, could we put these columns with other bits and pieces in there with some nice big screens on there, put a trainer in the room and take care of anybody who walked into your gym, can walk into that room and do a 30-minute session, a 40-minute session with anybody else, and they're never going to do the same session twice. You just shake the box up and they're going to have this amazing session. And so that's what we did. We created this fantastic little studio area, and we thought, I know what we're going to be, because I'm not a businessman. We're going to advertise ourselves as we're not a gym. How stupid is that? We're not a gym. We're going to get the people who need to exercise, who are never going to go in the gym. They're the people we want, businessmen like you, Graham, people like me. And we'll put a studio, a little lab next to this little studio we created. And in that lab, we'll put a physiologist there, because I'm coming from professional sport. And I put a physiologist in a room. And in that room, Samir, you could have, this is 12 years ago, you could have pinprick blood test that looked after good cholesterol, bad cholesterol, triglycerides, sugars in your bloods, and you could do a VO2 max test, and you could do body composition. And we could say to the middle-aged businessman, look at the mess you're in here, you're in a bit of trouble. But actually, we've created a room where you can go in and not be sore tomorrow, you can do whatever. So we thought we had something really, really interesting. So we started down that journey of, can we just not be a gym, open up around next to gyms, quickly realised actually we are in this industry and we need this industry. So we started to approach big boxes to say, could we be a little box? And we were making some headway with that. But we're asking for a fortune for the studio because the units are too expensive. So somewhere just before COVID, I spoke with Graham and said, can we buy the Americans out? Can we take control of this?
They were doing fuck all anyway.
Can we bring the price down? There was nothing happening in America. It was all happening with us. So can we bring the price down? And he did that. And we were able to bring the price of these units down from 16 grand to 6 grand. Like that. Changed everything in the studio for us. It took the studio down into a reasonable price. There's still challenges there because you're saying to someone, do you have a dedicated space? Can we put this in? Can we bolt it into the floor? You know, these things are not moving. Once they go in, they're getting bolted in. But we did some deals before COVID, started to move before COVID. COVID happened.
Valentine happened by then.
Valentine did it. Everyone Active did it several times over. Studios looking great. And they're incredible studios, and I'm very proud of them. And they're still there doing really, really well. And I love them. But a little independent gym, you've only got one little studio, you're not going to buy that because you're going to say, well, I need to put my other bits and pieces in there. So there's challenges there. So during COVID, you couldn't get a treadmill. You could get a Peloton, I think, because they went, Psh, that's it. But you couldn't get like dumbbells or anything. So I thought, can we create a portable version of this bit of kit? Can we create a connected version of this bit of kit? Can we create a small footprint version of this bit of kit that could fit in someone's smallest room at home? And can we do all that? And can we take some more price out of it? And so because it was SpeedFlex, we're always slower than what. So COVID was gone, and we were still working with this. I've got 2 or 3 iterations in my house of videos of me nearly killing myself on this bit of kit. But you're working with a guy, and you're trying to get it there. And actually, 2022 time, we ended up with, and it's you know, I'm thinking we'll call it the Blade. And I'll not someday in another podcast I'll tell you why I called it the Blade, but it's not for today, but it's for another time.
Or the second episode.
Well, yeah, it's for another time. But I called it the Blade. And I tell people it's because it looks like a switchblade, and it's definitely not that. But some people in the industry know why it's called the Blade. But
I need to know that.
I'm not going to tell you. I'll tell you off camera. So called the Blade, connected, small footprint, and we've taken the price down to under $4,000 now, to a mid-range treadmill. And you're saying, and we sat in the board meeting, and I can remember as clear as day. And Graham said to me, "You know your bit of home kit you've created there, Paul. You've created the gym floor piece." And I said, actually, we've created a functional training piece as well. We've created something that someone can just move and take away. And I once met someone very bright who said to me, we created a treadmill killer.
Yeah.
That's me. As you, but Samir, I was talking to someone the other day, and I thought, actually, these bits of kit that no one knows what it is, we're making our way now. We're since 2022, we've had a second birth, and I'm very proud of it. And we've got some great people working with us, and we've got some great people behind it, and it's flying, and long may that continue. But we've had that long journey. I mean, you talk about the curve is.
Yeah, the hockey stick.
The hockey stick, yeah. But I'm very proud of where we're at. But we've taken some arrows in the back, and I've caused a lot of that. I'm also going to take the credit for doing the bits that taken us to where we are, because both those things go together. I've had to take the pain to find a new way to be. But we've got this bit of kit now that if I had a gym and SpeedFlex had been invented before treadmills. If I walked in that gym and I was used to coming in there and doing a total body workout, getting my cardio, no impact on my joints, doing all those bits and pieces, and you came in and said to me, I'm going to take those out and stick these treadmills in there instead, I might say,
what the fuck you're talking
what are
about?
you doing, man? Come on. So yeah, you know, and I went last summer, different stage of my life. I went last summer to Florida. I said I went to a great franchise. Need to exercise for my heart. Need to do something. Walked in, paid $30. My son paid $30. He's 33. Walked in the room and off he went. He was doing everything, lifting big weights and doing. I walked around thinking, can't go on the treadmill because I've had a new knee. Can do a bit of watt bike maybe for a bit, something like that. And I walked in and ended up setting myself a little circuit with light weights in the corner, doing some battle ropes in the corner with a little circuit in a studio in the corner. And then I turned around and there's 3 young girls like got their tops off and doing this in the corner behind me. I thought, this is not for me. If there was something like SpeedFlex or I would have gone there, done my work and left the room. So we've now got I think we've now got an incredible product that I'm really, really proud of. I wish I hadn't had to take so many arrows. I mean, I spoke to, he was a friend of yours, I spoke to Dave Wright about it, and I spoke to Dave about my zone at the time, and I remember I was telling him all about the kit, and he came up and looked at it and said to me, Paul, back in the day, you don't have a value proposition. He's a very honest man, and I said, well, he said, yeah, but it's not. And I brought him down about 2 years ago, and he won't mind me saying this, into one of the SpeedFlex blades, and he's halfway through, he turned to me and said, now you have.
Now you have it.
Now you have. And then I got too excited because he was there. And there was a guy doing some personal training with 4 clients over the back of where I was training with Dave. Dave was training with our head master trainer who's got muscles on top of muscles. And Dave's a middle-aged man. And I said to Dave, you're a middle-aged man, but you're overweight. And he was like, whoa, steady, not too honest. And I said, yeah, the point I'm making is look what you're doing. You two, you're doing a level of exercise. He's getting his, you're getting yours. Training together, that can't happen. And I looked over this mezzanine, and there's a personal trainer with 4 clients, and 3 of the clients are young and fit, and the other one is about 70 years old, and they're all on treadmills. And I looked over and I said, come here, Dave, have a look at this. And I looked at them, and the 3 guys in the treadmills are running like they were, Tarzan. They're running like this. And this little old man looked like he'd already had a stroke. He was running like this, and I said, which one of those is not enjoying that? And he said, yeah, that guy. I said, yeah. And then we did the exercise. And no stage managed, none for me. And I looked over again, and the trainer had taken them across onto the SpeedFlex blade. And I called Dave back off again. I said, come on, have a look at this. And the little man was doing a power clean and press. And he's working with that. I said, tell me what he's getting now. He's standing next to those young people there. Look what it's doing for him. And he's taking nothing away from them. And he said to me, have you stage managed that? I said, no. No, but that's what that. So when people talk about genuine innovation, genuine inclusivity, that's why I talk passionately about it, because it's actually, I am the person. I'm not the footballer. I'm not 16. I'm 60. I've had a heart attack. I've got prostate cancer. I've got I'm not doing so well. I've got an artificial knee. If we do a HIIT session in this room, you can do it. I could do it with you to an extent, but I'm going to be in terrible trouble tomorrow. So when I think about what this thing could bring for people, it gives people the ability to do a level of exercise in a short space of time. For some people who maybe don't understand the gym, they come in and just get their work done, not be sore today and not be sore tomorrow. And another example, you and I walk into your gym, and you're the best trainer in the world. And then the guy beside is the most excitable trainer in the world, and I walk into 60-year-old Paul. If I go to the most excitable trainer in the world, I'm in trouble today, because he's going to say to me, right, come on then. Yeah. And tomorrow I'm lying in bed thinking, I'm never going back to the gym again, never. Give me some food.
Well, that's a huge problem.
That's a huge thing. If you're the best trainer in the world, you're going to take me on a journey, but you're going to say, Paul, you haven't exercised for a while, let's go on a gentle, let's go for swimming, and 6 weeks from now, I might have forgotten why I came in the first place before, and then you're going to hurt me anyway.
Yeah.
When I think of the SpeedFlex blade and SpeedFlex as a concept, it just takes those two people out of the equation. Great trainer, fantastic. You want great trainers around it. But it takes the excitability and the other bit. That takes care of it. Because no matter who you are, this thing's going to respond to where you are. And should you come in tomorrow and be fitter, then it's going to go fitter with you.
Yeah.
So that's my. So when I think about passions and different things in life, I'm passionate about my books. I'm passionate about taking this thing to where I always should have taken it and where we always should have taken it. And I think we're there.
Meth, we still have 8 minutes to go.
Sorry, am I talking
13. No, it's 13:52. 2 o'clock is the deadline for him to go to 2:10.
Oh, yeah. Go 2 o'clock. Yeah.
We leave it to.
Leave it to you. Have
I have a time there. No,
you're starting to worry if you've heard enough now. That's what it is best.
The issues.
No, you're right. Thank you. No. Yeah.
So obviously we've spoken about this being the treadmill killer. We've spoken about why I personally feel it should be in gyms, and I've been an operator all along, and we've always had this, this one set of people who need the cardiovascular exercising, but you can't put them through HIIT. No. You can't get them to run on a treadmill, especially. So the big mistake people do, a lot of trainers do, is somebody who's overweight, get them to run on a treadmill. That's the worst thing to do. Exactly. I still remember I used to play squash, and we had somebody who had come back after a long time to play squash, and the coach said, whoa, you're not getting on the fucking court, because you're going to injure yourself. But you don't realize, mentally you think you can do that, but you can't, and you should not be doing it, because your body, your knees can't take that weight.
Samir, honestly, and we'll not talk gyms here. You know this bit about your body as you get older, realizations that your body's not doing what you want it to. I took my son paintballing when he was about 9 years old, and this very, very stern man showed us all how to do paintballing. You put the bullets in here, I'm going to blow this whistle, and then you're going to go and try and take their fort, and they're going to take your fort. And I'm like, well, I'm loving this is fantastic. You should be being competitive. Got my gun ready, got my mask on, my son's there with all of his kids, and I'm thinking we're going to win this, and he blew the whistle, and I ran across, and I saw a little ravine there. I thought, I'll just jump across that ravine, go behind that tree, and then I'll get around the back of the other people there. And I ran, jumped across the ravine, but my body didn't jump across the ravine. My body landed in the ravine. My feet hit the water, and my head hit the bank like that. My head hit the bank, and all the bullets fell out, and I couldn't see out the mask. And the man blew the whistle again. He said, we've had a false start. And he said, he picked me up by the back of my neck and said, go and get some more bullets, and go and clean your mask. And that was the first time you think, my body wasn't in. So you're back, and to go back to your point, it's a very important point. HIIT training, but absolutely guaranteed use of your time. The science is telling you it's a remarkable use of your time for all the reasons that we all know. And for all the reasons afterwards, you get the post-exercise oxygen consumption, all the bits and pieces afterwards of doing this exercise. The vast majority of the population can't do it. Even the people who can go to the gyms, most of them can't do it because they've got previous injuries.
I won't want to do it.
No, exactly, because it's tough and it's messy and it's tough. And I walked into, and I'll not say where I was the other day, I walked into a studio where one of our clients has created his own studio concept, and it's brilliant, and it's brilliant. Actually, I can just tell you, it's a
Weird-
village hotel.
yeah,
It's in
yeah.
Chris Southall, amazing man, amazing forward thinker. I remember talking about the blade about 3 or 4 years ago when we just got it, and I started to talk about it, and he said, "Yeah, I'll buy 2, Paul." And I said, "Yeah, but I was going to say," and he said, "Paul, I've just said I'll buy 2." I said, "No, but I haven't finished." He said, "I've just told you, I'm in." And I was like, "Wow." If everybody could respond like that, the world would be. I would.
No, I think he's
Incredible, incredible. But he just said, "Look, I've seen your studio. I'd like to put blades in as part of my studio." So you go into his studio, and he's got his 4 blades there, and he's got his 4 boxes, and he's got his 4 boxing things. And I look at it with my SpeedFlex head on, and I think, brilliant exercise, but actually you don't have to worry about the person in the room really doesn't have to worry about the 4 people on SpeedFlex.
Yeah.
First of all, they're getting remarkable exercise. Intensity is going to be through the roof. They're not going to be sore, and if their form goes off a little bit, they're not going to be hurt either. So it's a remarkable thing to have in your room, because it's going to give you belting exercise. Belting, is that the term? I'm talking to Manchester for too long. You're going to get incredible exercise, but very safe. And actually gives the trainer almost a moment to think, well, I'm not worried about I need to worry about the guy who's swinging that kettlebell the wrong way or whatever. I need to worry about the guy who looks like he's going to limp off the back of the treadmill. So I love what they've done with that, and I love the versatility of it. I love the fact that you can go on your gym floor, but it can be the centerpiece of your functional training area as well.
Yeah, I've seen it in I used to go to Village Berry, and I've seen it there. And I think one of the things about Chris Southall, what I've realized is, he's really, really concerned about member experience. He wants them to have the best. He wants to be differentiated. So as a business leader, he sees the value in the product as being something that adds value to the customer experience, which eventually adds to the brand.
Absolutely. And so you asked about experience. When I first got the SpeedFlex studios and I was doing whatever it is, I'm looking around thinking, I'm going to put citrus smells in there, because that's the smell that goes with high intensity interval training. Researched that, did all that. But Graham Wiley walked in one of the days and he said to me, "What's that smell?" And I said, "It's citrus. And he said, "It smells like dog poo." I said, "No, it's because your dog poo bags have got citrus in them." But I'm creating experience. Experience is everything. So there's 2 things for me. Well, there's a million things. 2 things that I always keep in my head. Experience is one, and a sense of belonging is another. I still feel like, in some way, as an outsider in this industry, in a gym, you have to make me feel like I belong. I want to be. We all want to belong. When I walk into those rooms, when I say to you, they're all brighter than me, all I want is someone to speak to me, to say hello to me, and give me that. In the gym is the same. I want to belong in that space, and you do that by creating an experience that brings me back. That is for me, and I think these people are thinking about me. They want me to be here. When I walked into that gym in America with my son, after 20 minutes, they don't want me to be there. They want guys like you with the lovely big muscles to be there. I bet you're glad we finished on that note as well, aren't you? Yeah. But they want guys. But I want them to want me. I need it more than you need it. And I also need the cardio element more. But we all need to belong, and we all need experiences.
Paul, what's next for SpeedFlex? Where do you see this organization growing? Obviously, you hit that point where you started growing, exploding. You're in the Middle East. You're in without naming clients, you backed some really good contracts.
No, we have, and we are intending for next year to actually, we just want to replicate. We want to replicate what we're doing in the UK, and we want to replicate it quite quickly, and we want to take this thing to where it should always have been. So we're going to do that quickly but sensibly, and we're going. So next year you'll see us popping up, I hope, in different regions around the world.
We've done well in India as well. We started
exactly. So you'll see us in India, and you'll see us in Dubai, and you'll see us in South, and you'll see us in America. I hope you'll see us in Europe, and we'll start to grow there. And you'll also see us, I hope, breaking into the independent gym market in this country. We just employed 2 brilliant young girls who are fresh into the industry to come there, and you get a message the other day to say one of them sold her first SpeedFlex blades.
Amazing.
And it's not like an American whoop whoop whoop, but actually it is that you send her a message to say, do you realise that you do that once, you can do that 100 times? Yeah. So well done, you're on your way. So if your product's not very good, you're not going to get very far anyway. But actually, I hope when people deal with us, I hope when they leave the room, even if they don't buy it from us, they think those people are coming from the right place and they're trying to do the right thing.
I think other thing what I've seen in SpeedFlex is, like you said, you mentioned you started with a £16,000 price point. today you even optimized for manufacturing, optimized for logistics.
We have.
So with manufacturing now moving to India,
Yeah.
that's reduced the cost, which makes it the same product, but it goes at a better price to customers.
Correct.
So you can buy more of those.
Correct.
You know,
Correct. And we still haven't lost touch of. Actually, we have created a home unit as well. We just haven't thrown any marketing at that yet, and we won't for a little while. But actually, it's a remarkable. When I walk into, a home, I see some people's, gyms that they have at home. I see my own. I have a SpeedFlex unit in my garage with a couple of auxiliaries around there in a small garage, and it's enough to give me a really good workout.
Even Alan Shearer has one.
Alan Shearer, I met him on a train just by chance about a month ago, and we just sat. And he's a very honest, very, very straight talker. And he just said, "Paul, I love it. I love the blade. I said I use the blade, and I use the bike. They're the two things I can use because I'm wrecked. And he won't thank me for this. He's not Alan Shearer, world's most expensive footballer, Premier League's top scorer. He's Alan Shearer, 55 years old, 2 patella tendon surgeries, cruciate ligament injury, fracture dislocation of his ankle. He's a mess. He won't like me saying that, but he's a mess. If you say to him, could you jog along there for me? He can't do it. But he can be in this bit of kit doing big, powerful movements in a short space of time, recruiting lots of muscle groups, resistance exercise, cardio exercise, and gets up the next day and he's not sore. So
amazing. On that note, thank you so much, Paul. Really appreciate your chat.
No, thank you for having me.